NVIDIA, a company worth more than most countries, just named their most advanced AI chip after Feynman, a physicist who died in 1988. Never owned a personal computer, never sent an email, never even saw the internet. This wasn't a tribute, it wasn't nostalgia. This was a strategic decision made in a room where every syllable on a product means billions in revenue. And the reason they chose his name over Einstein, over Hawking, over anyone else in the history of science, tells you everything about what the smartest people in technology understand about intelligence, and what most of the world still gets wrong. March 18th, 2025, San Jose, California. Jensen Huang, leather jacket, no notes, 2-hour keynote, stands in front of 25,000 engineers and does something unusual. He puts the name of a chip on screen that won't ship until 2028. 3 years out. That never happens in tech.
Our next generation will be named after Feynman.
You don't reveal a product name 3 years early unless the name itself is the message. One word on that screen. Feynman. And the reason goes deeper than most people realize. Every NVIDIA GPU architecture since 2006 has been named after a scientist. Tesla, Fermi, Kepler, Maxwell, Pascal, Volta, Turing, Ampere, Ada Lovelace, Hopper, Blackwell, Vera Rubin. Each name maps to what that generation was built to do. Turing, the man who defined computation. Hopper, the woman who made programming practical. Ada Lovelace, the woman who wrote the first algorithm. Volta, the man who gave us the battery. So when Jensen Huang puts Feynman on the chip designed to power the next era of artificial intelligence, the era where machines don't just memorize patterns, but actually reason through problems, he's making a very specific claim about what the future requires. He's saying the future of AI isn't about processing power, it's about a way of thinking. But here's what makes this more than a naming story. Feynman didn't just inspire this chip from a distance. He didn't write papers that happened to age well. He literally built the ancestor of everything NVIDIA makes today. With his own hands, soldering circuits, painting walls, debugging code at a company most people have never heard of. And that story starts with a lunch in 1983. Danny Hillis, young MIT graduate, hadn't even finished his PhD, sits across from Feynman and tells him he's starting a company to build a parallel computer with 1 million processors. Nobody had done this. The entire computing industry ran on one processor, doing one thing at a time, very fast. Hillis wanted 1 million of them, doing 1 million things at once. Feynman's response, documented in Hillis's own essay, was immediate. That is positively the dopiest idea I ever heard. Now pay attention to what happened next, because this is the part that matters. Most people, when they hear an idea they think is insane, walk away. Feynman didn't walk away. For him, a crazy idea was an opportunity to either prove it wrong or prove it right. Both options were interesting. By the end of that lunch, he'd agreed to spend the summer working at the company. He showed up the day after the company was incorporated. Not a week later, not after reviewing the business plan, the next day. A group of not quite graduated MIT students were sitting in a rented mansion outside Boston, still arguing about what to name the company, when Feynman walked in, saluted, and said, "This is directly from Hillis's account. Richard Feynman reporting for duty. Okay, boss, what's my assignment?" After a hurried private discussion, Hillis writes that it went something like, "I don't know, you hired him." They told Feynman his assignment would be to advise on the application of parallel processing to scientific problems. His answer? "That sounds like a bunch of baloney. Give me something real to do." So they sent him to buy office supplies. A Nobel laureate buying pencils and tape. While he was gone, they panicked. The part of the machine they were most worried about was the router, the component that delivered messages between processors. Their engineers had calculated that each chip needed 7 buffers to handle message traffic without jamming. Problem was, 7 buffers made the chip too big to manufacture. They were stuck with no obvious way forward. Feynman sat down with the actual math. Not as an advisor giving high-level wisdom. He sat down with the raw problem. He used a differential equation involving the average number of 1 bits in a binary address, an approach nobody else in the building would have tried, and proved that 5 buffers would be enough. The engineers ignored him for months. By September, the chips were still too big. They had no other option left, so they built them with 5 buffers, hoping Feynman was right. He was. The connection machine. 65,000 processors running in parallel became one of the fastest computers in the world. By 1993, 4 of the top 5 fastest machines on the planet were connection machines. Steve Jobs saw one and asked its designer to build his next computer. The blinking red lights in the Jurassic Park control room? That was a connection machine, and the chip at its heart ran on Feynman's math. But the part Feynman actually cared about came earlier. In 1983, a Caltech colleague named John Hopfield gave a talk at Thinking Machines on neural networks. At the time, studying neural networks was about as fashionable as studying ESP. Most serious computer scientists avoided it entirely. Feynman walked in and saw something none of them did. He figured out how to map each of Hopfield's artificial neurons onto a single processor in the connection machine, with connection strengths stored as numbers in memory. Because neural networks are inherently parallel, every neuron fires at once, the machine could run them at 100% processor efficiency, hundreds of times faster than anything else available. 1983, 4 decades before ChatGPT, and Feynman is hand-optimizing neural network code on a parallel processor, the exact architecture that now powers every AI system on the planet. He also discovered that the connection machine could compute his own Feynman diagrams, the quantum physics calculations he'd invented decades earlier, faster than a special-purpose machine Caltech had built specifically for that job. And the visitors who came through Thinking Machines in those years all tell the same story. They'd walk in and see a Nobel Prize-winning physicist on his knees, soldering circuit boards, painting walls, debugging routers, not advising from a corner office, building with his hands, because he didn't believe you could understand something by looking at it from the outside. You had to get inside it, take it apart, put it back together yourself. For him, that wasn't philosophy. It was how he worked every single day. And it's the reason his name ended up on NVIDIA's most important chip. But to see why, you have to go back 2 years before Thinking Machines, to a lecture at MIT that quietly changed the future of computing, even though almost nobody in the room knew it at the time. May 1981, the Physics of Computation Conference at MIT Endicott House. Feynman is giving the keynote. He opens the way he always opens, by ignoring the agenda. On the program it says this is a keynote speech, and I don't know what a keynote speech is. Then he asks a question nobody else in the field was asking. Can you simulate nature with a computer? Not a rough approximation. Can you build a machine that does exactly what nature does? His answer was no, and his reasoning was straightforward enough that anyone listening could follow it. Nature runs on quantum mechanics, and quantum systems have a property that classical computers can't handle. The information needed to describe a quantum system grows exponentially with its size. Double the system, you don't need double the computing power. You need exponentially more. Add 10 particles to your simulation, and you might need 1,000 times more processing. Add another 10, another 1,000 times. Classical machines can't keep up. They never will. So Feynman proposed something that sounded, in 1981, like science fiction. Build the computer itself out of quantum mechanical parts. Let the machine be as strange as the physics it's trying to simulate. His exact words, from the published paper, International Journal of Theoretical Physics, 1982, were, "Nature isn't classical, damn it, and if you want to make a simulation of nature, you'd better make it quantum mechanical. And by golly, it's a wonderful problem, because it doesn't look so easy." That paper is now considered one of the founding documents of quantum computing. 44 years after he said those words in a lecture hall, NVIDIA put his name on a chip. Because the core of what Feynman understood that day, that you need to build machines that work the way reality actually works, not the way textbooks describe it, turned out to be the central insight of the entire AI revolution. And here's the connection nobody's making. Every major AI system in 2026 works the same way. It ingests enormous amounts of data, finds patterns, memorizes those patterns, and replays them when prompted. Feynman had a word for that kind of thing. He called it fraud. He saw it in Brazilian physics students who could recite every formula, but couldn't explain why a ball rolls downhill. He called it out in his 1974 Caltech commencement, the Cargo Cult Science Address, where he described researchers who followed every ritual of scientific method, but produced nothing real. They looked like scientists, sounded like scientists, went through all the right motions, but the substance was hollow. AI in its current form has a version of the same problem. It's the greatest pattern matcher ever built, but genuine reasoning, working through something truly new from scratch, not just recombining training data. That's where it stalls. NVIDIA knows this better than anyone, because they build the hardware these models run on, and their roadmap tells you where they think the answer is. Vera Rubin ships in 2026 and 2027, 14 times more powerful than Blackwell, raw horsepower. But Feynman, arriving in 2028, represents something different. It's the pivot from brute force training to what the industry is calling inference. How efficiently a machine can actually reason through a problem, not just how much data it can process. Jensen Huang said it at GTC 2025. The amount of computation we need as a result of agentic AI, as a result of reasoning, is easily 100 times more than we thought we needed this time last year. 100 times more. For reasoning, not retrieval. And they put Feynman's name on it. The man who spent his entire life proving that knowing the answer and understanding the answer are completely different things. The skill that made him irreplaceable in every room he walked into. Los Alamos at 26, thinking machines at 65, everywhere in between, was never his IQ or his credentials. It was that he refused to accept any answer he hadn't rebuilt from the ground up. At Los Alamos during the Manhattan Project, he supervised the human computers, actual people operating mechanical calculators, and figured out how to run calculations in parallel, handing problems to 3 different groups simultaneously and combining their results. This was decades before anyone used the phrase parallel computing. The logarithm algorithm he invented there, by hand, in 1944, ended up running on the connection machine 40 years later. When the Army told him the safes at Los Alamos were uncrackable, he taught himself how the locks worked from the inside out. He noticed physicists tended to set their combinations using mathematical constants, pi, the base of the natural logarithm, and he started cracking safes so regularly that the military had to change their security protocols because of him. When Hillis told him the router needed 7 buffers, he didn't defer to engineers who'd spent months on the problem. He sat down with the math and saw what they couldn't. As he wrote in The Character of Physical Law, it doesn't matter how beautiful your guess is. It doesn't matter how smart you are, who made the guess, or what his name is. If it disagrees with experiment, it's wrong. That principle, applied honestly, without compromise, is what made him Feynman. And NVIDIA just staked a $3 trillion bet on it. When he died in February of 1988, he left a chalkboard in his office at Caltech. The university photographed it exactly as he'd left it. In the corner, in his handwriting, 7 words. What I cannot create, I do not understand. Every other name on NVIDIA's roadmap, Tesla, Turing, Hopper, honored what those scientists built. The Feynman chip is different. It honors how one man thought. And in 2028, when that chip boots up for the first time, his name will be etched into silicon. 7 words on a chalkboard. The standard a $3 trillion company is trying to meet.